Hi, everybody. You're really welcome to this last session in our Talk to an Irish Music Master sessions. Um, we're delighted to have Dr. Ciarán Ó Gealbháin back with us today. So I think we all enjoyed him very much when he gave the first of the presentations on Sunday. And so he's back with us today now to talk about the musicians in his own locality in the Déise, in the Waterford gaeltacht, in the very southeast of Ireland. So Ciarán, you're welcome back. And
Thanks so much,
we're
Siobhan.
delighted to have you with us.
Thanks so much. Lovely to be here with you again.
Ciarán is from the Shanafobal, which is the oldest part of the Waterford Gaeltacht, which is the Irish-speaking area in the southeast of Ireland. And there's a peninsula which sticks out into the ocean called the Ring or An Rhine. So that would be the area that Ciarán's at home in. He's a lecturer in the Department of Folklore and Ethnology at University College Cork, and his doctoral research focused on features of the Déise song tradition, so his song tradition there in the southeast. But Ciarán is a very accomplished sean-nós singer himself, and he used to belong to the very famous group Donohoe, so people might know that traditional Irish music group, and he's travelled all over the world with them, sharing his interests in the music and the song traditions of his region. So he's an academic and a performer, and I love that he can wear both hats. He walks the walk, but he can articulate it as well. So that's very useful, Ciarán, for those of us who aren't familiar with your tradition.
A
So
kind of a jack of all trades, Siobhan, is what they say.
that's you're a very modest man to say that, Ciarán. Very modest.
You're very good. Thanks for that lovely introduction, Siobhan. So I'll try sharing the screen here. We'll see how we get on. And I must remember this time to share sound as well, because we're going to be sharing sound files. So I've titled this very boldly. I've called it Selections from the Archives, Old and New. And the new there, let me just get this going here. The new there refers to something I'll share with you at the very end of the presentation. It's an archive on which we're working at the moment, making material available online. So audio-visual material available there. So we'll get to that towards the end of the talk. So I thought it might be kind of useful if we just take a quick overview of the region that I'll be talking about. And I suppose before we get into that particular region, I always think it's helpful to think about the very strong connection between Ireland and Gaelic Scotland. You know, we're not talking about a tradition in isolation here. We're talking about a shared tradition that extends into Gaelic Scotland there. So this wonderful image from the space station, I think in 2018, when we had another beautiful summer, I think it reminds us of this great connection that we have with Gaelic Scotland, because we tend to think in terms of these political maps on a north-south axis, and Pedro Riada reminds us that it might be more beneficial. Pedro Riada, of course, great musician himself, son of Ciarán Ó Riada, the very influential musician of the 20th century. He reminds us that it might be best to think, or he suggests to us that it might be best to think of our relationship to Gaelic Scotland on an east-west axis rather than a north-south one. So you can see all these areas highlighted in the west of Ireland here, all Gaelic-speaking areas, and into Gaelic Scotland here. So I think it's a really helpful kind of visualization of our relationship with Gaelic Scotland, and much of what I'll be talking about today now will have resonance or relevance to Gaelic Scotland also. I'll be talking to you about the tradition in this tiny little corner down here. Siobhan mentioned it there earlier on Rang Ó Gúnach and Shanafobal Gaeltacht na Néise. So the Gaeltacht are the Irish-speaking area of County Waterford. The Gaeltacht, for those of you who mightn't be terribly familiar with this term, it's a term that refers to Irish-speaking areas, and we have Gaeltacht areas in a number of different counties in Ireland. So Irish-speaking areas are areas that are recognised as being Irish-speaking. From County Donegal right down the west coast, Mayo, Galway, Kerry. There's a small Gaeltacht in County Cork, and an even tinier one here in County Waterford. That's where I'm coming to you from, down here. And Siobhan mentioned the peninsula here on Rhine. The actual word Rhine refers to a point. That's what Rhine actually means. On Rhine Ó Gúnach, that word Rhine that you find in the place name refers to the land that juts out into the sea, so the peninsula. So I'll be talking to you from this area down here. And we shouldn't forget County Meath. There's a small Gaeltacht in County Meath also. and a number of offshore islands as well, which are Irish speaking. The Aran Islands, maybe you might think of those, and Ilan Clare off the coast of Cork. But I'm going to be talking to you, as I say, from this little corner down here. This is a map of the Baronies of Ireland, and I'm going to specifically be talking about this area here, the Déise without Drum and the Déise within Drum. And you can see the little peninsula that I'm talking about here. So what I'll refer to you today, now the area that I'll be referring to today, or the areas that I'll be referring to today, will be from around this area where I'm, where my mouse is moving around at the moment, a place referred to as Sliabh Gua. And then on Ciarán Ó Gealbháin down here, I'm from a place called Unshanafobal, which is approximately where the mouse is landing now. This is a map I made for my doctorate that I included in my doctoral study, just to kind of clear up some of these things, some of these places that I'll be talking about. So Unshanafobal here is where I'm broadcasting from today. And this is the peninsula again here. And this area here in a kind of a red hue, that refers to Sliabh Gua, which doesn't have any really fast geographical parameters. It's a kind of a cultural term that is used for this particular area, Sliabh Gua, and it's not very easily defined, but that's where I'm talking about. North County Waterford there, Túraníana, Medeligo, Moyelga, Coonasmere, that kind of area there. So I'll have occasion to speak about some singers from this area a little bit later on. But our principal focus will be on the gaeltacht area down here of Ciarán Ó Gealbháin and Unshanafobal. So there's Ciarán Ó Gealbháin again, showing very explicitly how the land juts out into the sea, the Rhine, if you like, the point that refers to the peninsula. And I'll be talking to you specifically about places like Ballinangowl. So I think the first recording that I'm going to share with you was made in Ballinangowl. The great hero of the area, Nicolas Tobin, who will be the last singer that I'll maybe play for you as part of this presentation, was from Ballyreilly, just here, this townland here, out on the peninsula. Very beautiful part. So to give you kind of a better idea of the kind of place that I'm talking about, this is a wonderful aerial photograph. We're able to get these wonderful photographs now from with all the technology that's available now, with I can't think of the word now. What did they call them?
The drones.
Drones. Good girl. Very good. That's the very one. So we have these wonderful photographs now, and that's on Ciarán Ó Gealbháin there, jutting out into the sea. As you see, this is Cown Helvig. This is the pier out in Helvig, and just here under my mouse would be Ballinangowl, that area there. So I'm speaking to you from Unshanafobal, and it's a little bit on the other side of the peninsula, where we have this wonderful lighthouse, the highest lighthouse over sea level in either Britain or Ireland, I'm told. It's just below me here, and this is the kind of area that I'm broadcasting to you from down here in Unshanafobal. And there's myself and my son were visiting a very old court cairn, the only one on the south coast of Ireland, and this was. This takes us back to something like 3,500 BC. So there's people in this area for millennia. So that's the kind of area I'm talking to you about and talking to you from. So the people then that have influenced me so greatly over the years, I'd have to mention this lady here who was my school teacher, and we became very friendly afterwards. We weren't so friendly while I was going to school, to be honest with you, but we became very friendly afterwards, and she shared so much knowledge of song with me, and indeed, I mentioned it in the last chat that we had, that the education system shouldn't be overlooked as a very important part of the transmission process, so I would have been introduced to great singers at school, and this lady here would have been very influential on me. Eileen Benny Honacha, who sadly passed away a few years ago. That's a picture of Eileen when the two of us took off in the car one day. We went out to Sliabh Gua, looking at going to her favorite places, which happened to be graveyards. She loved going to graveyards and visiting graveyards and finding out about all of these wonderfully deceased individuals. So there we are in a graveyard out in Sliabh Gua. This lady here, Nicolas Tobin, I mentioned her again in the last presentation as being someone who lived just right across the field, literally from me here. And I was visiting, of course, very regularly with Eilish. You can see Eilish Tobin. She would be of the very famous Tobin family, Nicolas Tobin being the most well-known of the family. And the convention in Irish is to give the maiden name first, and then Ban de Poyer. She was the wife or the spouse of a man whose surname was de Poyer. So Eilish Tobin Ban de Poyer, who again sadly passed away a few years ago. But we'll have occasion to talk a little bit about Eilish, and she again shared an awful lot of songs with me. This man here, Seamus McCrath, is a tremendous friend of mine. And I was telling you in the last chat that he's actually teaching me a bit of beekeeping at the moment. So we're great friends. We have lots to talk about between bees and songs and the whole lot. This is a picture taken on the occasion of his 80th birthday party down in a pub that's referred to locally as Draper's pub. So keep that in mind now, because I'll be talking a little bit about Draper's pub. So this picture was taken in Draper's pub. It is more officially known probably as Tigachol down in Ballinangowl, but to the local people it was always Draper's. And I'll be talking a little bit about Draper's today. And that's a great night that we had down there for Seamus's 80th birthday party. So this is again somebody who would have steered me towards some of the great singers of the area. To step back a little bit now, before we come to the more recent recordings, that I want to step back and play some very early recordings for you. So I'm going to share the first recording I'm going to share with you was made in Draper's pub, in the pub that Seamus and I were just sitting in there in the previous image. And these are recording. Well, the recording I'll play for you was a recording that was made in Draper's pub in 1903, and it was made by this man here. An Dochtú Richard de Hindenburg, or Richard Henry, wonderful scholar of music and Irish language, an Irish language polemicist, you'd say. You can see he passed away in 1916, but Richard de Hindenburg and his brother Owen de Hindenburg, whose image I have here also, they made recordings in the very early part of the 20th century, which have come down to us, thankfully. And they are noted as the earliest field recordings of Irish music and song that are extant. So you might come back and say to me, there are earlier recordings available of Irish singing that take us back to the very late part of the 19th century. But these are the earliest field recordings. So in other words, Owen de Hindenburg and Richard de Hindenburg, Richard Henry, they brought their Edaphone recording device into the field, if you like, and they brought it amongst the people. And one of the places that they went was Draper's pub in Ring in 1903 and again in 1905. But the first recording I'm going to play for you comes from Ballinangowl, from that area in Ring, from Draper's pub in Ballinangowl in the year 1903. And this is an image that helps us maybe visualize the kind of place it was when these recordings took place, an image from 1900. So here's a little note that I took from an Irish language journal, a contribution by Ciarán Ó Gealbháin, who was a contemporary of Owen de Hindenburg and Richard de Hindenburg, or Richard Henry. And he refers to the Dr. Richard Henry. He said the doctor was not long returned from America in the early part of the 20th century, and he had in his possession the latest equipment, a recording device, the Edison phonograph. And their car went west to Draper's public house, to Draper's pub, or Murish Lanes as it was known, and the crowd gathered in. Owen de Hindenburg made recordings on the spot from some of the older singers, and there was tremendous astonishment amongst the people at hearing their voices emanating again from the recorder. So this is absolute gold to hear about, the earliest recordings being made in our neck of the woods back in 1903 and again in 1905. But O'Creen goes on a little bit here, and it's relevant to what I'm just going to play for you now. He says, I recall one particular song being taken from a man called Sylvie Vickle O'Muirehe. You can see he was born in 1846. So we're going to listen to a singer now, this Sylvie Vickle O'Muirehe, who was born just in the middle of the famine, you would say, 1846. And the song that he sang was Cachie Mania. And in all of his excitement, he forgot the words at the beginning of the second verse. he commenced near Khan Farban na Posh. That's the first line of the second verse. And then he stopped, uttering, "To the devil with it, I've forgotten it, Father," before the machine could be stopped. So he kind of, he forgot himself, if you like, in the presence of the priest, and he says, "To the devil with it." And this goes down in the recording. But he continued the song. But there was great fun and laughter later when "To the devil with it, I've forgotten it, Father" was heard again from the machine. And for many years afterwards, there was great fun had at the gatherings when this recording was played. We're in the extremely fortunate position, folks, to be able to listen in on that moment in 1903 in Draper's pub when Owen and Richard Hennebury made that recording. So let's have a listen. Now, I should add the caveat that the quality of this is quite poor. I remember I played some of these recordings for others previously, and one woman came back to me and she said she found it quite a disturbing experience. So I hope it won't be disturbing for you. But what I would say to you is, if you're wearing headphones, just to be careful as I go from excerpt to excerpt, because the levels do change. These are old recordings. So we're going back to 1903 and an Edison phonograph recording. What's happening here? I beg your pardon. There we go. And let's have a listen now to Sylvie Vickle, who was born in 1846, singing a verse of Cachie Mania.
Ciarán Farban Ó Gealbháin, say no to no giving or gCláirseach Harry to us and you have to the guard the more over the intro, or Sada the dinner. Oh, no, what again, the flavour, or let the air through the glass on the Oriel. And is there you will your water the Ciarán. In the world of the quality with the skin upon it, the water. Son Barak, you are the wine. Hold on, the other speak in the head and the speak in all sandy and hello. You are the union on your son, what was the green of son of the trophy dome, the people of the poor.
There we are, just at the very end. On Dia Choshe Kite to go matter, he says. I'm after losing the song, he says. So, it's absolute gold for us to be able to listen in on that. It would be something similar to some of you being able to listen to Dennis Simpson or somebody like, it's that important, I think, And Sylvie Vickle there, born in 1846, he was actually the oldest informant that Hennebury recorded. So we have the earliest recording from the oldest singer, so it takes us right back to famine times. It's really important and brilliant to have. So wait till we see now. Okay, so the next singer I'm going to play for you now comes from 1905, another wax cylinder recording. In fact, I should mention that in the previous image there, you can see this wax cylinder recording device here, the Edephone phonograph and the wax cylinders here. This is the actual machine that was used. It's not just an image taken from the internet. It's the actual image, the actual machine that was used in this instance. So let's go ahead now and listen to the next singer, made again using the same device. And this is Martin Draper from 1905, from July of 1905. So we're now in July 2021, and this is from July 1905. And we're going to listen to this man here, Martin Draper. And you remember that I mentioned Draper's Pub. So we're back in Draper's Pub, the old homestead of this man here, Martin Draper. This is an image taken much later, because the recording that we're going to hear now takes us back to a time when Martin was only 16 years of age. And in our last meeting, I sang a verse of the song that we're going to hear now. It's Martin Draper with all of this wonderful melismatic ornamentation that we don't quite hear as much, maybe, in present day singing in this area here. So again, a recording made by Richard Hennebury, 1905, and this time Martin Draper in Draper's Pub.
Qualadine, sung by Martin Draper of Ring, County Waterford.
That's Martin Draper, aged 16 years of age in 1905. And there's Martin, as I say, sitting in the centre of the photograph. I knew some of these individuals, folks. I knew this man here, Micheál O'Donnell, who was the Banastóir in Coláiste na Ringe. He was the manager of Coláiste na Ringe when I was a very small boy. And I may perhaps know one or two others in here. I think Don Locanéla might be in there. I'm not entirely sure, but certainly Micheál O'Donnell over here. So these are really important recordings. I'll tell you a little bit later on where to find them, because you might want to go and listen to them yourselves. And just in relation to the song that Martin just sang there, it's a really interesting item in tradition, because it's a song that we know was composed by Raftery. Raftery was the blind poet that was originally from County Mayo, but is so associated with East County Galway. And we know that Raftery composed this particular song, but it came all the ways down somehow through the miracle of transmission. It came all the ways down to us in the Waterford gaeltacht, and we're able to hear Martin Draper singing that in 1905. So the song was perhaps composed sometime around 1830 or so, and by 1905 we have this song being sung in the Ring Gaeltacht. For how long before that I can't actually say, but it has undergone some beautiful changes along the way, because for instance Raftery would have mentioned a place called Gaeltacht in his composition, which is a place that we know, Gaeltacht in East County Galway. But there's no Gaeltacht down here, and so the people didn't hear Gaeltacht, they actually heard Tín Tarna. Instead of Gaeltacht, they heard Tín Tarna, which is a phrase used for a public house, so Tín Tarna. So we have these wonderful, what you might call, multiforms that come into play when people, misconstrue what is actually being said in the original, if we can never get back to what exactly the original was, but in an earlier form, if you like, when people misconstrue or misunderstand what was said, sometimes you find these wonderful multiforms that fill the vacuum really satisfactorily. They fill the, in terms of meter, they fill the vacuum perfectly. This is a really interesting one, where in the Waterford version, the poet is referred to as a grafadair, whereas the actual original, again, we're not deadly certain of what the original was, but an earlier form actually mentions the poet's name himself. But the surname would have been entirely, unfamiliar to people around here, and so this word made its way in instead of this. So there's some beautiful multi-forms to be found in this. I've done a little bit of study on that song. The same period again, July 1905, we have this wonderful singer here, Pat Snail, Padraig O'Neill. You can see his dates there, 1889. So let's have a listen to Pat Snail. Again, this man now is from Helvig Head, so a little bit farther out the peninsula. Actually, he's probably from Droichead na Gurrán, which is between Ballyroyle and Helvig. So let's have a listen to Pat's. He was a local postman, I think, at one point down there on Ryan O'Goonach.
Waterford Tea, sung by Patrick O'Neill of Ring, County Waterford.
So wonderful singing all together there now from Pat Snail. Again, a very interesting figure actually. When Eamon MacLeisert, a very well-known scholar in Ireland, when he was setting up a gaeltacht in County Clare, some of the inhabitants of Ryan O'Goonach actually followed him up there and planted that area up there in County Clare. Is it Bodyke, I think it's called. And unfortunately, the gaeltacht didn't actually survive there, but a number of people, in any case, from this area went up there and tried to plant the area and bring the Irish language back there. But the project was ultimately unsuccessful. But Padraig O'Neill was one of those. Pat Snail was one of those that actually went up there, and his granddaughter, I think, is still living there, and it's an interesting story in itself. But Padraig O'Neill, as I say, was a postman for some period of his life in Ryan O'Goonach. And in our last conversation, we spoke about how the tune could actually be quite a movable feast, and this is a really good instance of it, because he used an air there for that particular song that wouldn't be the usual one, and it works really, really well, and it's just a really good example of how different airs could be chosen maybe by different singers for different songs. So the song that he sings there, he titles it K for Claudige. Some of us might call it Gortin Ornan, but he uses a tune that would be more associated with On Bainshin Lochra, the little bench of rushes. So it's an interesting example of how a different tune can fit another set of lyrics very, very easily and very well, provided that the song is in the same meter. The next person I'd like to have you hear is this Breed Ní Noonan Benny Kinela. We're going to listen to a recording of her made in 1947. There's Breed there with, as it says, some friends in ring. The picture was taken in 1940. We'll hear Breed now in just a moment. A recording made by Seamus Ennis in 1947. He made a number of recordings with with Breed in 1947. So she would be regarded as a very important singer now around here as well. And her sons, Donald, who took the photograph here, you can see photo by her son Donald, was a very well-known singer. And I had the good fortune of being able to record Shameen, another one of her sons. And I hope to be able to share something of that with you a little bit later on. But let's have a listen to Breed now for a moment, recorded by Seamus Ennis. He thought very, very highly, and Seamus Ennis, of course, would be a very highly regarded authority on music. And he regarded Breed Bannichinela, Breed Ní Noonan. So that's her maiden name, Bridget Noonan Bannichinela. So she married a man by the surname of Keneally. So sometimes she's referred to as Bridgie Noonan by her maiden name. But let's have a listen to her singing here now. And I think the instance that I have for you, I think the song that I have here now is On Bain Sin Lochra, the same, pretty much the same air as what we've just heard Pat Snail singing. I think that's the one I have for you.
And so the ark is an so but I has my ashes no Agus sharkies ground Sir Marad she block on the log Not in leaving water Vrach na killa galisha bra Nes magaira gonna gwaisha Gahwa saudas maganullah And so the yarkes were Na groya fingers and brother gulon Agus sauran Bain Sin Buantike Den lacher of Glishaval Nehiachas and a guanta Been twagen as the green snow The greatest lashens twara As the bodies walk over the pole Shadow shilum go wavaro Fan wamas na kralam stro Nas kap na Bain Sin lochra Is a was terrible.
As I say, that's pretty much the same air as we've just heard for an entirely different song. But as I say, Bridgie Noonan now would be a very, very highly regarded singer, and I hope you can hear the wonderful artistry in her singing there. You know, the way she will lengthen certain lines and sing kind of, extended lines, so sing a line into the next one, if you like. And then she has this lovely use of ornamentation, So an exceptional singer, Bridgie Noonan. So we're going to move a little bit now. We have been down here, guys. We have been particularly out in the peninsula here now, most recently, Ballinangowl, and a little bit farther out. We were in Drogheda na Gurrán with Pat Snail, and we were, of course, down in Ballinangowl itself for Martin Draper, and that's where Bridgie Noonan was from, also from Ballinangowl. But we're going to leave that area there now, I think, and we're going to, sorry, I beg your pardon, we're going to go up to Sliabh Gua a little bit. So we're going to go up to Tourneana, this area here, and maybe a little bit further north of it, up somewhere around here, Raina Down Pawn, which is where we meet these wonderful men here, Donohoe and O'Coffey. One thing you might be noticing is some of the spellings, the way I'm spelling names slightly differently than you find them in the images. That's because there's a penchant for variety in the Irish language. We write names in many different ways. It changes, So there's all kinds of arguments as to what the names actually mean, and this is what has been most recently settled on as being correct for this particular family. But anyway, we're getting into an argument we don't need to get into maybe. So the two men that I want to talk to you about here now are Ciarán Ó Gealbháin on the right and Donohoe O'Coffey, who was Jimmy's father. So this is Jimmy Coffey or Ciarán Ó Gealbháin, and this is his father Donohoe over here. We're going to hear Donohoe from around 1958, I think, recording made by RTE around that time. Sean McRae, perhaps, or Ciarán McMahon, I'm not entirely sure. But it takes us back to that time, the late 50s. Now, the reason I have Jimmy up here is because Jimmy was a neighbour of mine. He actually moved from the Sliabh area and came to live down here in Shanafubble. And we became very, very good friends until he passed away, sadly, there in 2018. But I often called into Jimmy and got a load of songs. Jimmy was an unbelievably good singer, particularly in his prime. So if you heard Jimmy Coffey singing in the 1960s, it was absolutely incredible singing. I don't have anything to share with you here today now of Jimmy, but he was a wonderful singer and had a great store of songs that he'd learned from his father. He actually regretted that he hadn't learned more songs from his father, because his father was such a noted singer. Donohoe here. And let's have a listen to Donohoe now. So we're going out to Sliabh, a slightly different style maybe out there. And we'll listen to Donohoe O'Coffey from around 1958.
Madin shoch nerieirme is wel me machne kailte is aune will trade me na leish verforid Chwilisen burial meirach lobne kulle reine is gur frab mochile greinde gurdai van me Jere heimsche machne bante gushime uemograyal Drach ma rozen gardin no belach nu is brai should na venis dargerwachsin terenwer is uachje kringelegels nach edrum mishu Oy shed grasach wigme is marege atvinsche Marachern shenil sel kligen to gra is fatherus afayov Ostenisho chameyenshint Gebetur aseveilme snafaime gebrach.
I think this is a really good example again of, something we spoke about last week or in our last chat about the words of the song, the telling of the song, the story of the song, the importance of getting that across. And you can hear Donohoe telling the story there. Now he's quite advanced in his years there now. This isn't too long before he passed away, and you can hear him, telling the story. You can hear how important the story is. That it isn't all about the voice. It's about getting the story across. The story of the song is maybe the most important part, and you can see that Donohoe is trying to get the story across and telling it very well there. While we're still in Sliabh, we should mention this man here, of course, the great influence of Ciarán Ó Gealbháin. And again, you can see this penchant for variety, where this was a former spelling, and this is the more accepted spelling presently. But Ciarán Ó Gealbháin was an extremely important singer from that area out there, and spent a good deal of time in the Ring area, also in Ciarán Ó Gealbháin. So being that he was from Sliabh area, but he spent quite a good deal of time in Ring and had a great influence on the singers of that area too. And in terms of repertoire, he many of his songs would still be sung in the Rhine Ó in that area. The manuscript that you can see here is from the National Folklore collection, and it's you can see the first verse there of Cuine, of Uncuine, it's called here, Pilip Shave O Fahig. This is a song that I sang in the concert. And it's a very, very important item in the tradition, and I would have learnt it from Laura so Kyle, as would Nicolas Tobin of Rhine Ó and other people from that area. They would have learnt this song from Laura so Kyle, and it was quite a well-known song in the Sliabh Gua area, going back to the earlier part of the 20th century. And in fact, a recording exists from 1905, again made by Reverend Henry, Dr. de Hindenburg, made in 1905, of a singer from that area singing Pilip Shave O Fahig, and I'll show you where that's to be found a little bit later on. But I wanted to play a different example for you because Laura also Kyla, as I say, was a very important singer on a number of different levels. But one thing that should be said about Laura is that he learnt many of his songs from his mother and his aunts. And another thing that he learned from them was his knowledge of the keening tradition. So the keening tradition, of course, was something that died out in the latter part of the 19th century or the very early 20th century. It was the extempore singing of verse over the deceased individual. So it was a very important part of mortuary ritual in Irish tradition, but sadly it passed. It ceased to be practiced in the early part of the 20th century. But Laura also Kyla had memories of Cuine being practiced, and he used airs that were used in keening. He used them in particular songs, and the example that I have on the slide here is taken from a book called Ceol Ón Moon, published in I think 1940, or well, you can see the date up there on the screen there. Ceol Ón Moon might have been published a little bit later, but the recording was made in 1940, and I'm going to play an excerpt now here. It's not exactly what you're seeing on screen, but it's using the same keen music. It's using the same keen music that you're seeing notated on the slide here. I'll come back to this point in a second, but let's have a listen to Laura also Kyla singing, using an air that would have been used in keening in his part of the world.
Ciarán Ó Gealbháin na
I'll
Capui
scoot slightly ahead here now.
fuair boss capshe. Maim tu marach gri tu aringina Gavim sahaim pul gri moichnok Nach mu farfau na gulol kshistet Agus ban fi chlo kafok yochrito Ma yisri naid cerdif to Aberlo hadan chawra queen Ver kalin bon telishan omrisa Ta tu dol the marach a togen taras the lappen Snart nach gavat behrur na graffa Snart na taggen trad och lan varraun Snart nach gavat piana doch guskat mi de khala salato.
We just leave Laura Ross there now for a moment. You can see on the slide here I've mentioned Cuine Arti Laira. This would be the best known keen from the Irish tradition. It supposedly was written by Eileen Dovni Chonel on the death of her husband Arto Lyra. So she raised this keen over his dead body, we are told. Now scholars for many years were puzzled as to how this might have been practiced, how this particular keen, what kind of air might have been used for this keen. And Laura also kind of had one verse of this particular keen in his repertoire, and it cast light, if you like, on how the actual keen might have been practiced at the time of its composition. And it used that air. You can hear that air that I just shared with you. Pretty much the same air is what you see transcribed on the screen here, And it's one verse, just one verse of Queen Arthur, but it casts wonderful light on how that keen might have been practiced by Eileen Dovney Hunnell, all those years back. So a very, very important singer on a whole plethora of different levels. I mentioned Pádraig Ó Maolé in the conversation that we had on Tuesday. This was a poet from the Sliabh Gua area, and many of his compositions made their way into tradition almost immediately. So in the 1920s, 1930s, we find compositions of Pádraig Ó Maolé circulating amongst the people. They found their way into the tradition almost immediately because he was composing so much in that old Gaelic idiom, if you like, that the songs found their way into the tradition very, very quickly. And the instance that I shared with you on Tuesday was Sliabh Gealbháin na Féile, his most famous composition, but there are many, many other songs. Ciarán Ó Gealbháin, Mohig Bagéireacht, songs that are still sung in this area that were composed by Pádraig Ó Maolé, and that you'd almost have to be told were quite recent compositions because they're composed in that older Gaelic idiom. So I just said I'd put Pádraig up there just to mention him here while we're talking about Sliabh Gua, because he was such an important figure from that area, and many of his compositions are still sung today. I'm coming back now to the peninsula again, back down here, and these are the Tobin brothers. So you have Nicolas, the very, very famous singer here, Nicolas. We'll finish up with Nicolas in a few moments. But these are his brothers here. This is Seamus here and Daveen here, and we're going to hear Paddy in just a moment. But they were all wonderful singers. We can single out Nicolas as being particularly brilliant, but all of them had wonderful aspects to their singing. Let's have a listen to Paddy over here, who is very much less known, but a brilliant singer. So let's have a listen to Paddy, Pádraig Tobin.
Dandung fallamsa g'countelli tram Florin amandano Nes hauring shimmilvach agus mamar biwelt Florin amandano Veringer na long ne shawls na madit Devaren na down is singe fille ondrai Senili king shen of ron we hand the law Dor plorin a man no Dech me kmet chomi Tilaret le Marrelan tridio Snevi me kind is a kauralle Genach mirga park na mo He mer she's de lobanard Gar hog meshkrilsa femallau Na belkere na dianach she should yielding the halal Dor plorin amanda no.
I'd listen to that all day, guys. That's Pádraig Tobin, who's, of course, brother of Nicolas. This picture was taken outside of Draper's pub, which you see down here in the corner here, Draper's pub, that famous institution down there in Ballinangowl. So we're looking at this area here, guys, Ballinangowl Beg and Draper's pub down there. And the brothers spent a lot of time in this pub and were often maybe the worse for wear on account of it. There's a great story of how Liam Clancy, the great folk singer, called into them one day. He used to love to call into these guys And he called in one day, and they're sitting around the fire and they're lamenting their misfortune. And they're sitting around the fire and they say to Liam, "Look at what we're reduced to now, Liam." And they're all sitting around the fire eating lobster. So they think that their circumstances are really poor, being reduced to eating lobster. So a different world, guys, a different world now. You go out to a restaurant and you'll pay $50 or something for a lobster these days. But the Tobin brothers had no mess at all. It was the worst of food as far as they were concerned. We'll have a quick listen to Caught, another sister, in just a second here now. Caught was a noted singer from childhood, you'd say. I remember Eileen Benny-Honcha sharing this with me in an interview. She says, you know, anyone who'd come to visit the school, she would always be the chosen one. Caught would always be asked to sing in the school. And we all accepted that. Eileen was a singer herself, but by her own testimony here, she says Caught was just the best of them all. She says, we made no great wonder of it that she would be asked to sing, nor were we envious of her, that she was the one who was chosen, that nobody else was as good as her. So Caught was noted from childhood. Let's have a listen to her here now singing on Páistín Feann. And what's absolutely amazing really about what we're going to hear here now, this Páistín, her version of on Páistín Feann, or the fair-haired child, is that her brothers also sang this song, the brothers that we saw on the previous slide, but they had a different air to it. They sang it differently, you know. So that's another example of how movable a feast the airs sometimes were.
مخريم فاشدين فعون كل خيس هجين غار اللون آخر المرواح مغنون إسفيك مرة غماركم عجزت مريون 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 عجزت مريون ناس مغراقل سمهليون سماخمن قابون ستوب حتى قاقلوت تغادين.
Unfortunately, we have to leave Caught there because I see the time is kind of catching up a small little bit on us here. But I wanted to also say just a few words in terms of all of these singers that we've been listening to. What can we say before we get to Nicolas Tobin, before we get to, if you like, the best known singer of the area? I just wanted to say a few things just in terms of the Irish song tradition, and borrowing a little bit from Tom Munley here. And this is relevant to all of the singers that we've heard today. He reminds us of things like this, that singers were the vehicle through which the song flowed to be shared with their audience. I shared this with you on Tuesday. The song was the star, not the singer. Very, very important. Singers were subservient to their art and maintained an objectivity about it, you know, not getting too emotional about the performance. He says that this required a discipline and an artistic maturity that is sadly lacking in so many cases today. And here's another wonderful line from Tom: drama was contained in the songs, not in the performance. So, really profound kind of words here in terms of, Tom's perception of how good singing should be practiced. So we've come to, if you like, our final singer. I'm just going to share something of Nicolas Tobin with you. Nicolas deserves a lecture all on his own. He's a kind of an enigmatic figure, a wonderful singer with a store of songs. I don't know, he had some 300, 400 songs or something in his repertoire. There's a crazy amount of songs. And here he is sitting in one of my favourite corners in the whole of Ireland, inside in the corner in Mooney's pub, great little place. And he's here in the presence of Ciarán Ó Gealbháin, who himself is a wonderful singer now, but he had tremendous time for Nicolas's singing. And the example that I've chosen to share with you comes from 1971 and a live recording made in the Aula Maxima in Cork, in the University in Cork, when Nicolas visited there. and at the invitation, I believe, of Allied Fleischmann, I believe at the time. I could be wrong about that, but let's have a listen to Nicolas singing Maureen de Barra.
Is kein Blatt Marion droppen an
And I think we have to leave the class there, hard and all as it is. We have to leave it there. I'd like to say thanks very, very much to you all for listening to me, but particularly then to Siobhan and Ciarán for having me along and give me the opportunity to share some of these recordings that so fascinate me. I hope you got something from the presentation. You know, and I think the one thing that sticks out for me right throughout, you know, taking us back to 1903 to that earliest recording and right the way down to Nicolas in 1971 is this wonderful assortment of airs that we have here in this neck of the woods. The airs are the thing that really stand out for me. This wonderful range that's to be found in the airs of the songs in this corner of the world. So I hope I was able to share something of that with you this afternoon.
That's completely fascinating. Thank you, Ciarán.
Thanks so much, Siobhan.
It's just so inspirational, which is exactly what we're looking for in these sessions, just to inspire us at the beginning of each day to keep that in our minds as we look at our own music. So, míle buíochas ar fád, aus. Okay, we'll see everybody in the tea room.
There's lots in the chat here, but I probably won't get to all that.
Eilish had a question earlier on. She was asking about the Páistín Fionn.
Yes.
And where was it recorded, and where is the recording archive now, so she could get her hands on it?
On that, that was an RTE recording that was made in, I think, 1985 or so. So Eilish, if you want to email me, I'll pick that up with you. I don't think it's available. I have lots of stuff here that isn't available, and that I shouldn't have myself, probably. But
we don't know what you're talking about.
That's it, exactly.
We would never have anything like that in our collection.
People like taking stuff like that and just putting it into a press and keeping it there, and it's no good for the tradition, I don't think.
Well, Ciarán, Barbara Carlick says that was amazing. Thank you, Ciarán. And Amanda says 1,000 thanks for sharing this with us. Knowledge and music and stories and singers. The time flew by and I could listen to this for much longer.
Thanks so much.
And Laurie says such grace and beauty in these recordings. Thank you.
They're wonderful.
So thank you,
Guys,
Ciarán.
before I go away, I know you're going for tea, but before I go away, if I can't just share, I wonder, will I be able to do this? I wanted to show you where to find.
Oh, please.
If I can do it now. Why can't I do it?
Can we give Ciarán back the possibility to share screens if we've taken it away from him?
I think it's an issue on my end rather than on any
Oh, right.
Let me just see.
We'll bear with you because I'm sure we'd love to be able to get our hands
just to be able to do this yourselves.
On archive recordings would be wonderful.
Here we go. Now, can you see this?
We can.
Yeah, you can see that, Siobhan. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is the ITMA website, the Irish Traditional Music Archive website. So if you go in there and search Hennebury, you'll come to the Hennebury cylinder recordings. So there are 2 volumes of those, if you like. There are the ones from 1905 and the ones from, I would say, 1903. They're up here as 1905, but they're 1903, in fact, some of them. This is a site that we've been developing ourselves, guys, that you might be interested in taking a look at. Sean Bio, can you see that? And this is where we've been making recordings that we've made ourselves available. So if I go in here, for instance, I can see the various different singers that I've recorded myself, including Nicolas Tobin that we had the occasion to mention today, sister of Nicolas Tobin and Coit, and Maura Bateman down there in Helvig, and all of these other wonderful singers, Jimmy Coffey that I mentioned earlier on, Seamín Ó Cinnéala, from whom I got Lála Pádraig that I sang in the concert. So this is a really nice archive as well that we're building up bit by bit here in the gaeltacht. So
that's an incredible resource, Ciarán. That's
so have a look in there. It's seannosbio.ie.
And I've put
Siobhan, you would have met some of these now at our meetings down in Ring.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have very good memories of coming down to Ring once a month for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Where
they were great nights.
I lived only about 45 minutes away for a long time. But
so you can get the song lyrics in here. You know, the songs are there and recordings and
wonderful. Thank you, Ciarán.
Okay.
Great work on that.
All right.
Thank you, Míle buíochas. Okay, so Ciarán, we might see you later at another tea break. I know you're busy now, and sure not to bother if you can't join us. But thank you.
Thanks so much. Send me on the link for the tea later on, and I'll be there.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye. Gurmíle maithagah.